Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TopCyberPro podcast. I'm founder and CEO of TopCyberPro.com, Jim West, and I have a phenomenal guest. In fact, this is probably one of the most unique guests that is going to be on any podcast that you'll find all across YouTube. This man has been on multiple stages. He's been interviewed by all the top magazines, news stations, and he's been around the world more than a couple of times. This man is not only is he a technology evangelist, he is a white hat hacker. He's a speaker and author, but more important than probably all those titles, he is a transhuman. And I know when people think about transhuman, before you think of anything, this man is exploring the front line of what is the bridge or the convergence of biology with technology. And this man is at the bleeding razor edge of that because this gentleman here has, I believe it's 11 implants.
11 current and a few that I'm working on the side.
On the side. So without further ado, Len Noe, welcome to the Top Silver Pro podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Well, this gentleman has a very colorful, interesting, whatever adverbs you want to add to it, a history and past. But he's here now, like I said, at the razor edge of this whole biology and technology convergence, and he is literally living that life day after day. So let's just dive right into that, because when people, I see you got your background there. I Am Machine, and so folks, we're definitely going to talk about his documentary. But what is the why? Because most people, when we think about some people want to talk about implanted technologies. They first, if they're Christian, if there's a lot of Christians in America where they think about the mark
Mhm.
of the beast is going to be a chip they implant in us, or during COVID, Bill Gates was trying to put microchips in, processors in us. So, all that stigma aside, what was the why that kind of drove you to basically experiment and biohack yourself?
Well, in order to honestly answer that question, we kind of have to back up a little bit. So, to be honest, I've been into body modification, tattooing, body piercing pretty much since I think I got my first tattoo when I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be able to do that, but I grew up on the west side of Detroit as kind of a street criminal, and so the idea of implantation was kind of an evolution. Excuse me. I started off, I tell people I have one tattoo, starts at the top, the base of my neck, and goes all the way to the tops of my feet. I did flesh hook suspensions as a hobby. Yeah, I know. I'm probably about as far in left field as cyber as you can get.
Oh no,
You know,
but I mean, I find it interesting because when we think about that, we think of the movies and like serial killers and people on the edge, the fringe of that. But no, continue. I mean, this is riveting.
yeah, my past in cyber really didn't start until approximately 13 years ago. I was an active criminal. I'm a retired one percenter outlaw motorcycle gang member. I spent most of my time doing black hat activities and cybercrime, and I actually attribute my first hack to a Commodore 64.
Okay.
So, yeah, back in the day, my father was one of those types of individuals that really was all about the latest gadgets and gizmos. So I've had access to computers. My first computer was actually more of a set-top gaming system called an Odyssey.
Okay.
Uh, it, it was a Magnavox video game system, but it had a cartridge that you could buy that was called Intro to Computers,
Was
and
this
it
before
turned.
Intellivision and Atari got
Oh, it
involved?
was way before
Okay.
Intellivision, and I mean, the Ataris were there, but they were
Yeah.
way out of my price range. No, this was more of like your standard, really simple graphics and kind of along the same line as an Atari, but the top of the deck of the console itself had a membrane keyboard on it.
Okay.
And when you plug this cartridge in, it allowed you to run basic routines. And my father would go out every month, once or twice a month, maybe once every other month, and buy us some new game. And when he brought this one home, me or my brother, we didn't touch it because this is the only game that came with a manual that looked like a school textbook.
Uh-huh.
So we were like, if I have to read something to be able to play this thing, I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it just sat there for months. And I don't know why, but I came home from school one day and the book had fallen over and it was open. And you know when you just kind of look down at something, you can't help but scan what it says and you read it. And I'm not going to quote it, but it was something along the lines of, this cartridge won't help you plot a spaceship to Mars, but it will give you the basic fundamentals of the technologies that can. And it was like, well, wait a minute. So from the Odyssey, we had the, let me see, the Commodore 64, the 128, the Amiga. I had an 8086. I had a 286, a 386, a
486.
386 DX2 with that floating math coprocessor for all of you youngsters out there. Yes, believe it or not, decimal points used to be a thing.
Yeah.
So I've been around for the entire computer revolution, and I was never really on what I would consider the right side of it. There was something about it. My first network hack was in my senior year, or not my senior year, but my freshman year of high school in my vocational class.
Hmm.
My degree that I was actually going for was in computer aided design and drafting. So I wanted to be a CAD operator
Okay.
until I realized, and it wasn't Network Neighborhood. What was it? On Network
Network.
Explorer.
Oh,
No,
okay. Before
oh
Novell.
no, we're still talking Windows, but we can talk about double dots and NetWare if you like to.
No, no,
I
no,
got
no.
that
You're
in the,
good.
but I want to say it was Network Explorer in Windows 3.1.1 for work groups,
Okay.
and I stumbled across the fact that my instructor had a unsecured folder that actually had all of the tests and the midterms and the final exams just sitting there. So I actually wound up stealing all of those and selling them and making myself a really good side hustle my entire, high school career. From there, I started working in a design shop, and the fact that I stumbled into IT was completely just a fluke.
Okay.
So I was such a geek even at that stage that we were a small gate. We made quality control gauges for the automotive industry in, suburban Detroit. And our IT guy was overworked, and they were like, Len, you seem to know about this computer stuff. So you get to go be up there and help him for half the day, and you can do designing over here the other half. And it was like I just had a natural aptitude for it.
Hmm.
And within 3 months, I decided that this is more of what I wanted to do. So I started doing system administration, programming, web design, and I've run the gamut of everything that you can essentially do in IT over the course of my 32-year career. But the funny thing was, the exact same time I was doing administration for what is actually one of the largest human resource and payroll companies, I was an active black hat and riding my motorcycle up to the data center where I worked and parking and hanging my rags in cube land, and nobody thought this was an issue at the time.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a very, very conflicted past. And I do personally think that, my exposure to the dark side of technology, hacking, and criminality is what makes me a little bit unique within the cybersecurity space.
Hmm.
I believe it was Kevin Mitnick, and don't quote me on that, who said, there are two paths to get into cyber. You can go to college, you can get yourself a computer science degree, or you can just go be a criminal for a while. And if you're
Yeah.
good enough at it, when you get out, you got an opportunity.
Hmm.
And I've spent a little time in state-funded vacations and resorts. I don't really recommend them. The amenities suck, the beds are terrible, and the food is just not even worth eating.
Hmm.
But it was when they handed me my granddaughter for the first time that it actually broke me.
Hmm.
I couldn't help but look at this newborn baby and think this kid's going to wind up meeting me from behind bars someday.
Hmm.
So it was a very cataclysmic event in my life that had massive repercussions. The first least of which was trying to find a way to get out of the motorcycle world in such a way that there would be no hard feelings and no, long concerns about retribution or anything of that matter. But it's been the most amazing change in my life. I went from worrying about whether or not I'm going to get caught doing something to where now people pay me to do it. So I feel like I have the greatest job in the world. I'm a professional criminal.
Yes.
And as such, instead of causing mayhem and destruction, now those same skills that I can basically was able to curate over a career of criminality, in my opinion, are my most greatest offerings to my current clients.
I love that. I love that how you've made that whole 180 in your life, and you had that moment in life when you held your granddaughter that like, hey, I gotta change, and that's a great testament to the human spirit, free will, and being the authors of our own story, right? And you completely flipped the script on your story, and man, have you come a long ways, and you're still got so many miles to go, and things in your career still ahead of you, and it's going to be so exciting to see that journey too. So let's talk about. I want to kind of go back to your book because it's called Human Hacked, and it's got there's an additional subtitle on there, so we have it right there, Human Hacked. And folks,
Oh,
don't worry about the Google search. The link to the book will be in the description below, so we're going to save you that Google search. Let's talk about the book and kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis, a little taste of if someone goes to buy it right now, what are some things they can expect from it?
in a lot of ways, it's very autobiographical, because to your point, the first question, which I didn't answer, was why?
Hmm.
And I guess that's the biggest thing that people would take away from the book is what this is autobiographical because you can't just wake up one morning and go, you know what? Today is, sometime early October, you know, it's a little chilly outside. I think I'm going to go just start shoving, microchips in my body. It just, I woke up on the left side of the bed this morning. Human augmentation seems like a good idea.
Good. Not on a
It just
whim.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So the truth is, the idea for the implant attacks was actually born out of DEF CON and Black Hat, and not from a talk.
Hmm.
Prior to my current employment with CW Pensec, I was a technical evangelist for one of the larger identity security companies out there, and I was in that role for about 11 years. And we were actually working the booth at Black Hat, and I was watching people beaming their contact information to people via near field communication
Yeah.
in the
I
booths.
see. Mhm.
And I was just sitting there going, this just seems like a really bad idea. So I'd never really given any real thought to NFC outside of the fact that it's like, oh, this is the backing protocol for Apple Pay and Android Pay, but we have NFC triggers. And people had never really give too much thought or consideration to the additional functionality that these protocols can provide. So I started playing around with wearable technology in jewelry. So some of the attacks that I've released over the years, things like flesh hook and leprosy, which if you're the guy that invents the attack, the cool thing is you get to name it. So
Yeah.
I figured why not, do a little bit of, accentuation on the fact that these attacks are carried out through physical contact. And I started with a ring that had a little bit of an epoxy top to it, and they had put an NFC or a reprogrammable NFC chip under that enamel. And my wife and I were out to dinner one night, and the maitre d' actually had a tablet that they used as part of their check-in system for their point of sale. And I social engineered this guy's tablet out of his hand under the guise that I was considering buying a similar model, and walked the path all the way up to the point where it was going to download a malicious APK, and which was a reverse TCP.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, yep, you're not the bad guy anymore. But it vetted the fact that it worked. And was going to basically just leave it with using wearables. But I was actually sitting in the Netherlands in Amsterdam on a speaking opportunity, and a lot of people, they collect shot glasses. Maybe they collect the little country spoons that you can get at the
Yeah, or
airport.
bells. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. I collect stickers from tattoo parlors.
Okay.
So I was sitting in a tattoo parlor off of one of the canals in Amsterdam, and the piercer was talking to another customer about a different parlor the next town over, called Utrecht, where they had implantable RFID and NFC microchips that you could buy off the counter.
Okay.
And I had been well aware of the implant community since about 2014 with Grindhouse Wetware, which was they were the original guys out of the US that were creating implantable technology and implanting it in their garages. They were the ones that came up with the Circadia, the North Star, and they created a huge buzz about it. And then it just kind of died down. And everything that they had done was more for what I would call self-embellishment.
Hmm.
And that's not to belittle what they did, because these guys were the original founders that were laying the bricks of the road that I was going to walk.
Hmm.
I just didn't realize their significance at the time. But I couldn't make it to that other piercing parlor. But on that flight home, I normally never buy the Wi-Fi on planes because, well, let's be honest, it sucks.
Yeah.
But it was like I need to know. So by the time I got home from Europe, I had discovered that there was a implant manufacturer based out of Seattle, Washington called dangerousthings.com. They had done all of the expected testing that you would want from a medical provider in terms of shock resistance, pressure testing. And at that point, it was like, all right, due to the fact that I actually travel for a living, I need to look at the legalities of what I'm
Yeah.
attempting to do. And oh my goodness, the why, and we've been coming back to that initial question of why did I do this? And the reason why I finally made the decision was during the research around legality. I discovered that anytime you put something in vivo or with underneath the skin, it automatically inherits all of the same health and medical protections as a licensed medical device.
Okay.
So I have tools that are in the United States protected by HIPAA.
Okay.
Nobody is allowed to ask me about them. GDPR in Europe. So I have governmental obfuscation for malicious tools that is basically unbreakable.
Nice. Well, that's pretty dang eye-opening there.
Absolutely.
Because my one of my questions was going to be when you travel, and you do travel a lot, what is that experience like going through security, And so you just pretty much already answered that question already. So, but do you have to keep documentation with you, or is there like one medical report, or do you just
Nope.
say they
Nope.
already are aware that once it's in the, like you said, under the skin, that's it?
The laws around health and medical data here in the United States are some of the strongest that we have from a federal perspective. And I learned this because for my 50th birthday last year, I got a brand new left knee. So I I figured, I've seen everybody talking about those little medical cards that you get after a shoulder replacement or a knee replacement or a hip replacement. And I discovered those cards mean absolutely nothing.
Okay.
There's actually a template on the FAA website. If you'd like, you can download your own and fill it out yourself. It holds no legal weight, but from a HIPAA practitioner, the people, the TSA security guards, police officers, any type of authority, they have to be trained in HIPAA. And all I have to say is two magic words and it shuts them down cold. It's medical.
It's
That's
medical.
it. And and as soon as I utter those words, if they try to push or pressure me, number one, they're opening themselves up to a lawsuit. The
Okay.
only exception to that rule would be if I was caught in the commission of an actual crime where there was reasonable articulable suspicion,
Hmm.
then they still would not be able to force me to divulge anything about that because it's still medical, but they could get a court order for opening up medical records.
Okay.
But they cannot force any type of disclosure.
So with the US, UK, and Europe, which usually are pretty close with their laws, but what about other countries? Like if you travel to like that don't have as many laws that protect individuals, like let's say some parts of Asia or even the Middle East that you might have traveled in or through, have you had any issues whatsoever that might have hinged you up a bit
Never,
so far?
never had a single issue anywhere, and I have set foot on every continent except for Antarctica.
Wow.
My current country count is at 73.
Nice.
And I also think the fact that I have been the most vocal proponent of the transhuman or human plus movement, I'm pretty much known wherever I go.
Hmm.
So there are, but to your point, there are some places that I refuse to go just for my own safety. I've been through Russia before, but I would never go back. That was prior to the implants. I would never go to China. I would never go anywhere where the accusation of
Yes.
industrial espionage or spy could become an issue. So I do try to limit my travels to, we'll just say, educated countries
Good.
and countries that are understanding of the concepts of advanced technology.
Okay. So, there's a lot to be said. And I don't want to go into too many details because you have 11 devices. Is there plans to add more? Oh, look at this.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, the magnets in the
we got a
fingers
magnets
are
in the
always
finger.
fun.
And so
Actually,
there's been a lot of articles. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and you asked if I have anything coming up.
Yeah.
Eh,
No.
Let me do this for just 1 minute, just so I can show
Oh yeah,
everybody.
because of the yeah.
Yep. Let me throw a transit, fix that real quick. So these, you know what? We'll just turn off the chroma key for just a second. It's always something,
It's always something.
Stop virtual camera. And all right, I'm coming back. I'm
All
coming
right,
back. I
no
just got to
worries.
switch my camera real quick. Let's go here. Sorry about that.
All right.
So these are actually my next implants.
Now that's the
This,
little dot, is it? Not the white area around it, or is
not
it?
the white dot. It's just this part right here.
Oh, it looks like a
It's
SIM
about
card.
the size of a SIM card.
Yeah, size of a SIM card. Okay. And what does this do?
This is actually a MyFair Classic version 2 that allows me the ability to interface to, I believe it's 236 different physical access protocols.
Okay. So oh, physical
So
access protocols like for RFID or
badging
yeah.
systems, physical limitations, and this right here is a prototype. Let me pull this out for you so you and your audience can actually get a better understanding of the sizing. This right here
Uh-huh.
is a prototype of a new implant. This is actually a 1 terabyte hard drive.
Wow.
So this is modern day Johnny Mnemonic.
So where's this going to be implanted?
Probably right here in the back of my arm.
Okay, and around the tricep. Okay. Now, how would you
Basically the
interface with it?
same
Is it just
location.
wireless? Is it
It's wireless. It uses the same type of a connector that you would use for a Apple Watch or an
okay?
Android watch.
Hmm.
And once it's powered up and charged, it actually creates a hidden Wi-Fi access point
Hmm.
that you can then connect to and do transfers onto. There's also another implant that Dangerous Things is working on that is an implantable O2 sensor.
Hmm.
So this one is more my style. I'm
Yes.
really not the most health conscious guy. I'm more, I look at my body as nothing more than an electronics lab.
Hmm. So, with that
So,
being said, I'm assuming that has to be powered by a battery in that same chip,
mhm.
right? And so
Oh
you're
yeah.
talking a terabyte. I'm trying to think. My electrical engineering brain's trying to wrap around. How like obviously it must be charged on what a daily basis. I'm assuming it's got a.
When you want to use it, that's one of the drawbacks to this particular implant. So that's the actual receiver right there, and there's a thin battery that's underneath it. But the whole
Yes.
thing is about 2 millimeters thick.
Yeah.
So it's large for a subdermal implant, but still, I mean, I've got this big monster here that's in the front of that's actually my most current powerful. That's an RFID NFC with enough coil on it that it can actually read through the meat of my hand, and I can
Really?
hold a cell phone
Wow.
in its normal orientation and trigger an NFC sensor.
Okay. Now, obvious questions when people talk about like the wireless signals, RFID, the NFC signals that's going through your body pretty much almost 24/7 potentially. One of the concerns, and I'm sure that this is part of all the science of the tracking and seeing the effects of the body. We hear all these stories about you're not supposed to sleep with your cell phone because it's going to do things to your brain. You're not supposed to, be around technology or the screen too long because it's going to hurt your eyes. We've all heard these, these little stigmatisms about technology and so forth. But now that you have them implanted, what has been your journey, and like what is the level of, I guess, medical tracking and reporting that you do? Because I'm pretty sure your due diligence is probably through the roof. So what is that like? I mean, do you just
You would
kind of,
be so wrong.
I'd be so
Believe it or
wrong.
not,
So
I really do not have much faith or trust in current modern medicine.
okay.
I don't. I believe that most, and these are my personal opinions, not
Yeah.
to be
Mhm.
misconstrued. I think everybody has the right to do whatever they like, but I think we've put in way too much faith in medicine. And I also think that we've stopped allowing the human body to do what it was designed to do, which is heal itself in most cases.
Yes, I believe that too. Yeah.
Look at, we see how we're seeing more and more people that are becoming resistant to antibiotics because every time they get a sniff or a sniffle, they run off to the doctors and,
Shot.
you know, give me a shot, give
Give me
me
a pill.
some antibiotics. So we are modifying the human body's defense system. So unless it's and to be honest, I don't even go to the doctor when I need stitches. I just super glue it shut like a field surgeon.
All right.
But I don't believe that we need, and I don't necessarily personally feel it's healthy to not allow the body to continue to build its own immune system. So no, I really don't do much in the realms of doctors, but not just for that reason. I had one health issue in regards to all of my implants, and that was when I had the large one put here on the top of my right hand. And before I had it done, my mechanic, uh, shout out to Shaman Modification here in Austin, Texas, and Pineapple Tangora, the greatest body mechanic in the United States.
I love that term, body mechanic. That's awesome.
Well, there's a difference between a body piercer and a body mechanic. Piercers are good at taking needles and
Yeah.
shoving them through
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
I know this. I used to be a tattoo artist and a body piercer at one point in my career.
Okay.
The only skill you have to master is don't hit a major
Yeah.
vein, and you're pretty much good.
Yeah. Don't get a bleeder.
Body
So
mech
yeah, good. Yeah.
Yep. These body mechanics are the people that would split your tongue. They would gauge your ears.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
would do the
Yeah.
subdermal implant.
Yeah. Like the
In
yeah.
my, Mhm. This is not a piercer. In my opinion, these individuals with probably a couple of classes would be able to get some kind of a certificate to be a field surgeon or a trauma medic.
Yeah. In
They
a
understand
post-apocalyptic world,
much
you
more
want a buddy that's
biology.
a body mechanic.
Exactly. And I've said that many times because a lot of people ask me, like, well, can I just take this up to my piercer after I buy it? No, you don't want to do that. It'd be like going to a general practitioner when you need some type of retinal surgery.
Yeah.
You want somebody that specializes in this type of procedure.
Mhm.
And there's a huge community of people like me. The only difference is most of them keep their mouths shut due to the stigma that goes with it. You brought up Christianity,
Yeah.
and I will freely tell you, I've wound up on a couple of Christian extremist websites
I
as
can
having the
imagine. Yeah.
mark of the beast,
Hmm.
which I find really, really amusing because who knew Visa was the mark of the beast?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
prepaid debit card,
Hmm.
and to the point of being called out like that, I'm still just a human being with a little bit of extra capabilities, but I don't think that this diminishes my humanity or my entitlement to everything that comes with being a human.
Yeah.
So it's my hopes that by continuing to talk about this, I've spent the last 5 years bringing this topic to people from a concern standpoint. I can do things that normal human beings can't. How do you stop an attack if you can't understand it? How do you stop an attack if you don't even know the attack exists?
Hmm.
But I find myself, especially with what's going on today with deep fakes, we're sitting on the doorstep of agentic AI. We're
Hmm.
not even discussing what's going to happen when quantum comes onto the
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
We are at this pivotal point, in my opinion, as a species, that we are no longer necessarily the smartest thing in the room.
Yes.
And is it something like me and what I'm doing, augmenting myself? Is this the way to keep relevancy for human beings in this new technical future, along with the idea of, is this the only way that we can maintain some type of sovereignty over our own identities? There is no such thing as an SSL certificate to a human being.
Hmm.
If you look at what happened in Hong Kong, with the big Hong Kong deep fake, where the agent went into the Zoom call with what he thought was his board of directors, and he was the only real person there. How do we address this moving forward? Because it's becoming more and more common, and it's becoming easier. So is it somebody like me that can go, I have a private key,
Hmm.
and to that point, you know, I love showing off this demonstration. You know, I've been using these implants for 5 years to scare and terrify. And now I'm at the point where I'm trying to say these may be our only hope for the future. So we're all pretty familiar with OTP codes, right?
Yep.
You ever seen anybody get one like this?
Oh, look at that. Just seconds.
So this is
Wow.
a
Yep.
blockchain enabled microchip that is tied to my cell phone. This handles my OTP. It's my BIP32 crypto wallet. It does
Mhm.
HMAC SHA-1. It can act as a security key.
Yep.
And honestly, I can even put a Tesla key on there. I know that
Yes,
because
you can.
I stole my buddy's Tesla and moved it when he wasn't looking.
Wow. Well, you know what? I
But
think you're onto something there because I've been a long proponent. So I used to work a program in conjunction with the NSA. I was a trusted integrator and the crypto solution architect for CS commercial solutions for classified. And in that, we deal a lot with keys, private keys, and so forth. And one of the last things I tried to champion for government use was a company in Finland called Bittium had the world's most secure smartphone. And what made it secure because they engineered and designed it for the European individual because they really value privacy, and it has its own its own key library on the phone that you control and maintain. And so controlling your keys is ultimate in privacy. So I had asked the company if they could design their MDM to allow the keys to go to a centralized server location, so that way you got to centrally control it when you use it for government use. And they agreed to do it
absolutely.
only until the government gave them a large order. And at the end of the day, the agency decided to go with two other manufacturers, and everybody can open source intelligence look that up or who they went with eventually. But I still stand by that Bithium has still the world's most secure smartphone, at least for the individual. But that is interesting that you're bringing up having your own private keys and being able to generate your one-time codes and any kind of random number that you would need or any other uses for that. And you mentioned quantum, and so I do deliver a talk at a lot of events about the threats of quantum. And then one of the scenarios, Mo Gadot, former chief executive officer with Google, former Google exec rather, he's made the rounds on TikTok and all the other video formats about his statement about how I think it was ChatGPT 4 was approaching 155 IQ. Now that's a very broad statement because obviously there's several different IQ tests and measures, and you really can't
Hmm.
IQ test an AI, like a
Oh,
human.
I agree. I remember when that came out, and I even put out a couple of vlogs on that going, this is in specific areas, especially mostly advanced mathematics,
Yes.
which absolutely machines are going to be able to deal with large numbers better than humans. But back to what I was saying, where we have moved to a point where when you and I started doing this stuff years ago, we were considered wizards because we could actually write code.
Yeah.
And to preface this, I was reading an article, and if you'd like, I'll send you the link to
Of
it,
course, I
but
love
it
it.
was on futurist.com. And it said, according to multiple advisors, telling a college student to learn to code is actually worse advice today than telling them to get a face tattoo. Vibe coding. This along with the overconfidence in AI results, is another reason why I'm saying, is it somebody like me? We have moved away from having a dedicated language to be able to interface with the technology and moved it into language. Once we've done that, we've now introduced the concepts of nuance of language.
Hmm.
And we are no longer communicating according to the same protocols that the machine understands. We've added this language based abstraction layer. I can still communicate with the machines over native protocols.
Wow. But when Mo said that, I will add to that. With the IQ number, I think there's a lot of he held back because that number is a very important number. Because when I talk about it to folks, I said there's a reason why I said 155 because generally when we think of the smartest geniuses of all time, most people will say Einstein. And Einstein, even though he was never formally tested or had his IQ measured, it's accepted that he was at 155 to 190 range. So that 155 number is very important because it's an Einstein level of intelligence. Now, we can all agree, though, that eventually, if not already done so somewhere with an LLM or several LLMs, have already ingested every document and bit of information and all of the internet and deep web resources that has all been ingested, right? So all of the information available to society is already at some point, and several probably, has been ingested by AI. So at some point, once it starts to get into that general AI mode, where it starts to have some levels of sentience, is where the concern comes, right? Because if it has all the knowledge of everything of all history and all mankind, what what keeps it from being able to be 1,000 plus IQ beyond the smartest person on the planet, which is I forget his name right now, but there's a gentleman. I think he's 270. But bottom line is that once AI is off the scales, then you mentioned earlier about quantum computing and having such an exponential level of compute at its disposal. I think we're approaching where, we all know with technology, and you've seen it through 30 plus years of where something comes out, the technology's here, companies are using it, but the laws are usually 2 to 5 years behind.
Oh, 2 to 5. How let's just take a look at the deep fake,
Oh yeah.
and the current Nudify apps.
Hmm.
How many years have we been dealing with this and the laws are still not there? So I don't
Still
even think
not
two to
there.
five is appropriate.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 5 to 10. And
I
by the
wouldn't
time we get those
disagree.
initial laws, we've already moved past the scope of what those could handle.
Hmm. So we have a big problem because we have people out there that obviously are profit driven, and so we all know the evils of money and the pursuit of money. But then we have the a lot of folks that we can't get different regions and countries and groups of folks to agree to like standards of ethics and obviously when you talk ethics, there's morals and those things are usually religious based, culturally based, regional, but trying to come up with so like I've had a couple conversations with some folks from MITRE that are also trying to work on this problem about what groups of what ethics do we use, Asian based, like we can't get everybody to agree. And that's a dangerous situation too when you have companies that are pushing those boundaries and we have no laws on the books, we have no agreed set of standards or ethics to drive it. And the only thing I recommended to a couple of the MITRE folks that were trying to solve this conundrum, I said, you know what, maybe even more simpler than the ethics of trying to come up with an agreed set of ethics, look to philosophical razors as a filter for some of the decision making, even though they're very like we talk
No,
about
I think that's an amazing way to look at it, but we're still undertaking at face value that we're dealing with
yeah.
people that want to come to the table. What
Yes.
about adversarial nations?
Yes.
By not continuing to push down those roads and push the boundaries, does that put us at some type of a technical disadvantage to our adversaries? You know, from a defense perspective, from an economics perspective, the rules are great as long as everybody applies by the same rules. But to your point, that's just never going to happen. So, how do we, as we'll call it a Western society that's following these laws, back to my original question, or not necessarily my original question, but my original statement of sovereignty?
Yes.
I think this is going to become one of the biggest topics of discussion over the next couple of years. Sovereignty, independence, data ownership. We, up until, I mean, we were always getting scraped, but I mean, we could all accept the fact that Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram and X, you're signing up for that as
Opt
you
in. Yeah.
join the platform. It's part of the EULA. But what we weren't prepared for was the volume by which LLMs and AI are ingesting every bit of consumable data.
Hmm.
I mean, case in point, my book was released last October. By mid November, my book was part of a torrent download that was actually ingested into ChatGPT, which is really funny because you can actually go into ChatGPT and say, write me a sentence in the style of Len Noe, and it comes off gritty and just like me.
Mm.
And to expound on that point, there was a situation where me and a few other individuals who had our books ingested, we actually went to some lawyers to see if there was anything that we could do about this. You
Yep.
know, if it was
Hmm.
Facebook, you know, you could say this is a copyright strike, or
Hmm.
if it was YouTube, you could get the video pulled. But even the way that governments and laws are looking at LLMs and AI and data models, these are looked at as for the greater good, and therefore
Hmm.
there is no recourse.
There was a landmark case a couple months ago this year where authors around the world took a big loss
Yep,
because it ruled in favor of the AI companies, and authors have lost some of their rights when it comes to AI ingestion of their works, and so
absolutely.
that's a big deal. And again, to the point of we need the laws to catch up because we are losing our rights as authors, creators, and then so forth. We there's a lot of challenges, and again, the technology is outpacing, and before we know it, how much more are we going to erode our rights? And when you talk about data sovereignty, you're absolutely on point because right now, as
Oh, excuse me.
Americans,
I want to stop before you go any further.
oh,
I
go ahead,
wasn't talking just data sovereignty. I'm talking
but individual,
individual identity sovereignty
yes. And so
included in that.
you might be leading that forefront for that right of privacy and individual rights with, the convergence of biology and technology. But the one of the things you said when you mentioned adversaries, it popped in my head, and I'm sure you've had this thought more than once, but our adversaries actually watching you as the perfect case study for their espionage tactics? Because when you just said you could travel through airports, and as soon as you say it's medical, they could also be implanting drives and sensors and things so that when they're in proximity of anywhere around the mall in Washington, D.C., there's lots of agencies that operate there,
Oh,
coffee
yeah.
shops, pizza shops, and they could be also hacking, government employees and facilities, labs, not
Absolutely.
just DC. It could be labs in Chicago, Huntsville, Alabama, anywhere. Espionage is still really a big deal. And we used to think about covert listening devices and all these things like in the spy movies looking for the bugs. But what happens when the agent is the walking bug or thing that can be
What
exploited?
happens when I can walk out of, here's the scenario that I give this in the book. I've given it in my talks, but I think it's very valid. What are you going to do if you just find me in your data center somewhere? How did I get in there? Let's walk that scenario.
Okay.
You know, Jim, you catch me in your data center. What are you going to do? You're going to grab me. You're going to put me into your operational security. You're going to call the police, right?
Uh-huh. And then
They're
you
going to
just
come in.
uh-huh.
They're going to be like, Len, how did you get in there? Well, the door was open. I
Because it
don't know
was
what that
open
is,
for you.
and then you guys are going to go pull your tapes. They're going to see my hand come up, go near a reader. The door just opens.
The door just
You can check
opened.
your logs. Well,
Hmm.
Jim, it says that you were the one that logged in at the same time. Does he have a copy of your card? Let's search him. You're not going to find anything.
Yep.
The worst thing you're going to be able to do is just trespass me off the property.
Trespass you off the property. You're absolutely right.
But you don't know
Wow.
what else I did. I have 10 other implants.
Wow, that just blows my mind, Len. It really blows my mind. You're absolutely right. The worst they can do to you is trespass you off the property. Wow.
And this is where, being a former criminal, I know exactly where those lines are.
Hmm.
So, but to your question about, do I think I'm training adversaries in
Oh,
these
not that you're
techniques?
training, but
I
that
don't
they're
think it was
watching
me.
and following you as that
Oh, I
user.
know they are.
Yeah.
I know that they are.
Hmm.
And I can tell you with 100% certainty, I know of a couple of different red teamers and pen testers here in the United States that are using these just like I am in active engagements. And if we're using them as pen testers, the bad guys are using
Use
them
them
in the
too.
wild.
Hmm. So let's
which is why I keep saying if you don't know these attacks or these types of attacks can even happen, I mean, back to my, I wasn't done with that scenario. So if you catch
oh
me in
yeah.
there, you trespass me, do you know that you should then do a DFIR, or do you just go, hey, he got in there? This is what me doing these types of talks does. And if you want to know the truth, I am breaking the cardinal sin when it comes to cybersecurity. Not only have I told everybody exactly what tech that I have, I've mapped it out to where everybody knows exactly where they are in my body. That's
Hmm.
like telling everybody I'm using a Meraki firewall with
Hmm.
a Cisco switch. But to me, it's worth it in order for people to realize that it's not just me. There's over 100,000 individuals that have these same capabilities.
Hmm.
Now, granted, most of them are not using them as offensive tools. Most people, they're putting it in their arm because they don't want to worry about grabbing their keys when they jump in their Tesla. They're
Hmm.
using it so that they can access a shared garage, or they're using it to bypass
More
having
for
to carry an
convenience,
access
but
card.
not for experimentation or the biohacking
Correct.
feature. Yeah. So
Correct.
there's a documentary that you had come out at DEF CON this year, and again, it's it's riveting. And folks, I'm gonna have the trailer for it, also the link to the trailer in the description below. But it's I Am Machine. So can you
Yes.
step us through what the journey was in capturing this content for this documentary and your experiences with it, and tell little people a little bit of what they're going to get when they watch this documentary.
So I Am Machine was a brainchild of me, Chris Glandon from Barcode and the Cyber Circus Podcast Network. So Chris Glandon is an amateur filmmaker. He released his first film, Inhuman, a year ago at DEF CON. And it was actually that night. We were sitting at the Barcode Lounge having a couple of drinks, and he goes, you know what? I've been looking for what my next project could be. And I really think the idea of telling your story would become an amazing movie. And we originally were shooting for like just like a 30-minute kind of just a little, hey, this is what it's all about. And it turned into an actual full featured 1 hour, 20 minute, and 13-second movie. It goes through what it's like being a transhuman, a lot of the discussions in terms of deep diving into what it was like growing up, what would make somebody think that doing this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And there's some really amazing footage of my father and trying to explain what it was like growing up with a son that thought like me.
Hmm.
And what they can expect is a raw look into my life up to and including we actually videoed my last implant going in.
Okay.
So I mean it's nowhere the technology when it comes to the mechanic and how they're doing things has gotten so much better than when I started,
Hmm.
because when I started it was scalpels, dermal elevators. It was pretty brutal, especially when you consider there's no anesthetic involved. You need at least a nurse's license to be able to administer anesthetic in the
Yeah.
United States. So now it's just a giant needle that's bigger than a pen, and it will core out and create the right size, and you just pop the microchip right in. But I added my latest, which is a Java card, blockchain compliant, FIPS compliant dev chip into my right arm. And this was the first chip that I ever got that I didn't have a use case for in mind. But due to the fact that it's unlocked, I make my own apps that are tied back to my phone. And I've been playing around with ways of trying to see if I can steal blockchain ledgers and things through implants on somebody else's phone, almost like a crypto theft.
Hmm. Oh, wow.
Still working on those, but
Still working
having
on.
fun in the process.
Oh, the sky's the limit, right? So, with I Am Machine, you mentioned that it has your father is showcasing it as well, right? And so,
Yep, my father, with some friends. There's some people that we interviewed after one of my presentations in Philadelphia after B-Sides Philly last year. So we've got a really good eclectic mix. There's a lot of discussions. We even bring up the fact, like you said, that if you look in the news today, we're hearing the term transhuman thrown around a lot in political circles as people that are trying to live forever.
yeah,
I don't want to live forever. I can't afford the taxes.
yeah,
And part of what I'm hoping by continuing to have these conversations is, to me, being transhuman is not making me less human. It's actually making me more human in a world where humanity is being diminished by machines. And I know I sound like something right out of a Terminator, you know,
Or kind of like Morbius
trailer,
from the
but
Matrix.
yeah, I don't say that this is the only way, but to me, this is, in my opinion, the most obvious way for individuals to maintain individual sovereignty over their identity, provide their own proof of who they are in a world where we can no longer believe what we see or what we hear. And the funny thing is I honestly 100% believe that, it's 2025. By 2030, I'm going to be looked at as a probably a founding father and probably a
Oh, you
dinosaur
already,
just based on the
most
advancements
definitely
of
that.
technology.
You are definitely a founding father, and like I said, you're on the razor edge of this. And so, one of the things that was I was thinking about is, you know, people have heard about Neuralink, and obviously people are looking
Hmm.
for that. Hey, if I can only put what I'm thinking out on the TV or project my dreams or play back
Oh,
my dreams and all, that's what people want.
mm,
That's the fantasy. But just to
oh
be
yeah,
able to
that's
think and
the
have a
dream.
machine act on your behalf, right? So there's Neuralink, Elon Musk company, but there's a couple other ones that are doing some great work in this space. And so we got companies
Better.
like Paradromics and Precision Neuroscience. I think is probably got a lot of good things going its way. But there's a few other companies. So,
Hmm.
sir, how well do they have they reached out to you? Because obviously, if I'm
No,
one of
but
those
I've reached
companies,
out to them. And to be honest, the one that you didn't mention, which is the one that I follow the closest, is a company called Synchron based out of
Centron, yeah.
Melbourne, Australia.
Hmm.
And the reason I really love them is they are the only ones who are not following the history of BrainGate and everybody else from the original. Everybody thinks BCIs are new, and the term BCI is new, but we've been putting computers into the brains for since I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to say it was the late 70s, early 80s. But back then they were called BCMs, or brain computer machines. And you actually had to have a big puck that you would have to hold up to the receiver, but and it may have seemed clunky, but for shut-ins and people with massive disabilities,
Yeah.
this was freedom in accord.
Hmm.
But all of the science, even with what Neuralink is doing, and I'm working out right now. I've got a friend of mine, and we're in the process of trying to set up a conversation between me and one of Neuralink's chief research developers. And the one question I want to ask is, why are they staying with the same implementation strategy of open skull brain surgery? You know, Synchron, and one of the reasons I think they are so much farther down the path is they went with a stent methodology where they're going in
Hmm.
through an artery and up into a brain
Yep.
capillary and then expanding on the inside. It's a much lower risk to the patient. It's a lower entry point of skill set for the surgeon, and it reduces the possibility of brain infection
Hmm.
by almost 98%.
Yes.
You know, Neur- Neuralink in Elon, when it came to the EV space, revolutionized the entire industry. And I just wish they would have taken that same forward thinking to the application of brain computer interfaces, because at the end of the day, it's the patient that we need to be focusing on. But
Yes.
one of the points that I wanted to bring out, back to the concept of sovereignty again, is I've actually been in communication with Neuralink's patient one. Uh, Communication being text,
Yeah.
but he is actually now one of the biggest staunch supporters around neural data privacy. We're back to that concept of sovereignty again.
Hmm.
Realistically, the way that it's written at base level, all of his biostats become the property of Neuralink.
Hmm.
And when we're talking about anything that's able to essentially provide intention and motive, this is now basically stealing your thoughts, and nothing is safe anymore. And I want to say it was about a month ago, the first three states here within the United States actually enacted the first set of neural data privacy laws, but we're
Okay.
still at a state level.
Yeah.
This is something that needs to be looked at federally.
Literally. Yeah.
I keep coming back to sovereignty because I think as we move forward, especially, information is the current currency and it's going to remain the currency. And if we want to be able to have any of this left to ourselves, and if we want any privacy or autonomy, we need to start standing up and demanding it today.
I 100% agree. And this is a sad thing about privacy. Back when Ed Snowden, regardless of the political spectrum anyone's on, and that he betrayed his government and etc., at the end of the day, he did try to be a whistleblower and he did try to bring to the public that there was these government eavesdropping programs. And I love my country. I have a top secret clearance. But at the same time,
Oh, I can't touch that with a
as an
10-foot pole.
American
That must be nice.
taxpayer, I want all Americans to have rights to privacy. I'll have these, our individual rights. And I was a big proponent of, we should have transparency when it comes to government, even if it's for the sake of protecting us from terrorism and so forth. We have to have boundaries because without boundaries, I think it's another. You mentioned Ben Franklin, I think earlier. There's another Ben Franklin quote for those that want security and willing to give up their. Oh goodness, I forget the quote. But
Those who
basically,
are willing to give up their liberty
liberty
for security,
deserve
what
neither.
was it? Liberty and independence for security deserve neither.
Neither. And I love that quote. And as an American, I want us all to have our individual rights and freedom. So, when you talk about privacy, I think during those times when those revelations and data dumps would get out to the public, most Americans didn't care because the sentiment is, well, I'm not doing nothing wrong, so what do I worry about? But then when you start to really engage people, like I would have, debates with people that they would get real mad at me eventually. But I'll say, well, you got your curtains on your windows of your house, you got a privacy fence around your backyard. You value your privacy, and we'd always come to the conclusion, well, I'm not doing anything illegal. Well, it doesn't have to be about doing anything illegal. It's
It's
still
not about being illegal.
thank you. And so, but I know we could talk for a whole hour on privacy and talk
Oh,
sovereignty for the individual,
absolutely.
but I do want to respect the time that you're giving us today. So, but like I said, folks, you do need to do a deep dive into your rights. You do need to listen to some of the posts and watch some of the podcasts that Len's been on because he's sharing great wisdom and insight. Because again, if we allow it to happen, if we stay flat-footed and we don't stay on our toes, we're going to have our rights eroded and stripped away. And before you know it, it's like it's too hard to fight back once it's already been taken from you to get it back. So I'll leave
Absolutely.
that statement there. There's a moment I like to do, a moment of levity with my guest, Lynn, and it's just for pure fun where I ask some rapid-fire
Let's
questions.
have some fun.
Let's have some fun, all right? So I'm going to hit you with the first one that splits every room of techies. It's going to be Star Wars or Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Which
And
trilogy of the
and
Star Wars trilogy is your favorite?
I'll be honest, my favorite was Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. Okay, the OG. What's your favorite Star Wars character?
My favorite Star Wars character, honestly, was Darth Vader.
Darth Vader. All
I
right, he's a
Darth
good one. Yeah.
I'm an no kidding. When I was a little kid, my aunt was an artist, and she came over and did murals on mine and my brother's room. He
Uh-huh.
wound up with Huey, Dewey, and Louie from
The
Walt
Duck,
Disney,
or Walt
and
Disney. Yeah.
yeah, the ducks.
Yeah.
And I wound up with a giant Darth Vader head on the side of my
What?
childhood bedroom.
Ah,
So I've
awesome.
always rooted for the bad guy.
I just had Jeff White on the podcast, and he's an author of cybercrime.com, crime.com, and Rents, how the cartels use crypto to rinse their money. Phenomenal investigative reporter for, both the money laundering, meeting technology. But he was talking about, when he was mentioning that, Star Wars is the perfect story. And he was just kind of stepping through where within the first few minutes, you get the damsel in distress with Leia, and then you get the victim, you get the villain with Darth Vader, and he just starts going through it all. And it's just brilliant how he went
It
through
was
it all. But
amazing.
Darth
Now I
Vader
will
is such
say
a
that
presence.
we should have stopped after the first three, though.
Oh, of
I
course.
will freely say that.
Hands down. Even though we did have for a moment a great Darth Maul epic battle with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon that just
True.
it fell off really quickly at the end of that fight. But I really not to go off on a tangent, folks, but I really thought Darth Maul was going to be our Vader for three films, and when they got rid of him at the end of Phantom Menace, I was like, boo.
Uh,
Yeah.
Boo.
Anyhow, next question to
And
get you with is cake or pie?
neither.
Neither. Okay. What is
Not a
the
big sweets guy.
not a big sweet guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
It can be, but you got to split it in half and lay it flat.
The bread must be separated, is what you're saying. Separation of bread makes it a sandwich. Okay.
Yep.
Last one is
Anything between two slices of bread, sandwich.
Sandwich. I love it. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was the last book that you've read?
Ooh, my favorite book that I've ever read was POC GTFO.
OCGT. Oh, okay, wait. Okay, you're gonna have to break that down
Uh,
because my brain's drawing a blank.
it's literally called POC GTFO. It's a book. How do I put this? It's the book that has the answers to all the questions you never knew you had.
Okay.
And what was the last book I read was Win Schwartau's Art and Science of Meta War,
Meta War. Okay.
which I would very, very highly recommend. It's if you give me 2 seconds here,
Give me
let me
two
grab it.
seconds. And folks, Len will get me the links to these books, and so I'll have them in the description below. So you don't have to try to Google search it. Just pause the video, click the links, check these books out. Because again, if Len's read them, they got to be good. And so just please check them out. Also check out Len's books as we're talking about books. We're also going to have Human Hack, the link for it down below. So please buy a copy of his book, read about his journey. There it is.
So yeah, this is Wynn's book, how to coexist with AI-driven reality distortion, disinformation, and addiction in what he calls the metaverse. And we're not talking about Meta's version.
Like Facebook, yeah.
Basically, what we are living in is the metaverse.
Is the metaverse. You mentioned, like deep fakes and AI and alternate realities where we might not be able to trust what we're seeing anymore. And I had some conversations a few years ago, back when NFTs were all the rage, and they were essentially being hijacked for digital art scams and a bunch of FOMO and stuff that really ruined the
Mm-hmm.
technology. But I told people, I said, no, NFTs, the utility or purpose of them is for authenticity. And I said, we're living in a world where, this is a couple years ago before deepfakes is all the rage now, but I was like, we're living in a world where when AI comes in, we can't distinguish what's real and what's not. Or like right now, how do I know that's really Lynn on this podcast, right? We're going to have
Absolutely.
mechanisms to do authentication between us as individuals. Now, old school, like back in the old days, they would do by like they'd open the door, you have to say the code word, and only a few people knew the special code word to get access, right?
Frogs in winter.
There you go. And so, whether code words, passcodes, or so forth, eventually we're going to reach a point where we can't believe what we see anymore. And so I said, look, this is where NFTs come into play. So, one application I tell people is like, oh, for luxury goods, how do you know someone's Rolex is a fake or real, or their car that, does that rapper, that video own those 19 cars? Well, somewhere you could check on their social profiles. Well, they'll have their NFTs that are tied to that manufacturer's blockchain that will prove authenticity. It's kind of like when you went into a sports memorabilia store and you had somebody that would authenticate the signature of those professional players and so forth. It's going to be a digital version of that. So, like that Louis Vuitton bag will come with an NFT. Your shoes, like the shoe industry, there's all these pop-up shoe sneaker
Oh yeah.
stores that are making millions and millions of dollars that Nike and all these other shoe companies are missing out on. So, at the end of the day, I believe it'll come back. They'll probably rebrand it because NFTs has got a bad rep now. But it'll come back because the utility of authenticity, whether through
See, but
blockchain,
then we're using NFT as blockchain.
yes,
It's no longer a tchotchke.
yeah,
And I said in the beginning, NFTs were the dumbest thing in the world for everybody except the people making them
yeah.
and raking up the money.
Yeah. But I believe that that mechanism in our future, and again, it may be through
Absolutely.
a wearable implant, that may be the future because we're got to have a way to prove who we are between each other, even when we're doing
Absolutely.
Zooms or doing phone calls, because code words can be uncovered. People are fallible, right? We're going to always write it down somewhere. We're going to be somewhere where a camera captured it. I'm a big fan of the show Person of Interest, and my
Oh, I
wife,
love that show.
I've been catching her up. We're all end of season 4 right now. And folks, Person of Interest made by the brother of everyone knows Christopher Nolan because of he's a great director, but his brother, I think it's John Nolan, concepted that show, and they're both brilliant writers. But that show was way ahead of its time, talking about the dangers of AI and
Absolutely.
kind of a police state monitoring and so forth. And again, good show. Check it out, folks. Lynn, back to you. I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but to wrap up, I do want to give an opportunity. You did share a phenomenal story of your career and so forth, and I want to give you an opportunity. Has there been positive people, whether they were coworkers, colleagues, bosses, or people in industry that you admired that had a positive impact on you? That this question is really just for you to kind of. It's not meant to be a name dropping question. It's meant to be more paying homage to like these folks have really had a good positive impact in
Absolutely.
my life. And you already mentioned
You
one
know,
earlier.
I
Your granddaughter had the biggest positive impact on your life. But have there been other people in your career that have
Oh yeah, if we're talking career wise, I'd love to just, and it's going to sound like name dropping just because of who they are, but Win Schwartau, and if you don't know who Win is, I would recommend just looking him up. He is one of the godfathers of cybersecurity. He testified before Congress back in 84, 83, 84. He was the guy that actually coined the phrase that the internet is going to be the equivalent of the digital Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
So he has been an amazing mentor to me, along with my current boss over at CW Pensec, Dr. Gregory Carpenter, uh, former government worker, just an amazing person. And hats off to the Cyber Circus podcast network. They were the ones that decided that let's do a documentary. They were the ones that funded it. If it wasn't for these types of people, my story would be very much quieter than it actually is. And as much as it helps me out, I like to think that what I'm doing is actually trying to help out the rest of humanity, because nobody else is out here talking about this stuff. And unfortunately, it's a very controversial thing to talk about, especially in this extremist political climate that we're in. And I'm not going to go into it, but what I'm doing, it's scary because I am a target.
Yes.
And I just hope that people give me a little bit of grace for the fact that I'm trying to do the right thing. And the reasons I'm exposing this is not to try and just create chaos and panic, but to actually provide a warning and give people the opportunity to put preventative measures in place. Because I'm telling you about it, the next guy probably won't.
Yeah. And that's sometimes the cost of being the trailblazer because the path is not before you. You are literally blazing the
I
trail for
know.
everyone else. Um, the One of the last questions I want to ask, and I know we're running really short on time, but I want to get this one in because it's important. A lot of us folks are busy with our day jobs. I know you're busy with talks and speaking, podcasts, and so many things going on in your life. But we usually try to make time for causes, nonprofits, volunteer work, charities, things, organizations that are trying to do some good in the world. So what this question is focused on is
Absolutely.
there a charity, nonprofit, volunteer? And again, it's whether you give of your time, money, or your energy to. But the question is there an organization that's doing some good in this world that you want to shine a light on? And please give me their
I'd
socials
love
and
to give
website.
you two.
I'd
If
love
I
to
may,
hear
I
it.
would love to give you two.
Please.
The first one is the Autism Society. Um, my my daughter is autistic. I really try and give them as much opportunity to shine light on them as possible.
Yes.
There are more autistic people or people on the spectrum in the IT industry than in any other single industry out there. We
Mhm.
may be socially awkward, but we are the ones that get that out of the box thinking. And I really would love anybody, if you are looking for a charity, look at the Autism Society, and then my personal top charity is EFF.
Mhm.
The Electronic Freedom Foundation. This is the charity that is out there protecting all of our digital rights online. They're the ones that are trying to they were all around the net neutrality, and they are trying to combat censorship and
Mhm.
provide my talks and my goals of sovereignty align very well with EFF. And I think anyone that wants to use the internet really ought to go and check them out, because if it wasn't for them, we'd be looking at an entirely different screen.
And folks, he mentioned net neutrality. Might not ring a bell, but let me add the other name to that that'll probably make you remember FCC. And so now you should own the dots have been connected. And so what he just mentioned, that organization is tremendous. It protected all of us. So again, that was a really bad time in our lives that wasn't too long ago. So anyhow, Lynn, I know you got some things that might be upcoming. So if you want to share anything like events you're speaking at, or maybe hopefully another book you're going to put out soon, is there anything on the
Well,
horizon?
yeah, actually, I'm working on another book in conjunction with my boss, Dr. Gregory Carpenter. It's basically all around the future threats, not just necessarily transhumanism, the advent of, like we were talking about with deep fakes,
Mhm.
some of the projects that we've become aware of that the government's doing in terms of trying to turn EEG readings back into actual images. We are all around the concept of how do we keep us, our thoughts, and our minds private and not wind up being mined for the purposes of AI modeling or mo- profitization or monetization.
Or ultimately
I've got
manipulation.
Oh, that goes without saying.
Without saying.
Again, doing Hacker Halted. Right now, we're doing a lot around film festivals. So, I Am Machine
Awesome.
is currently submitted for things like South by Southwest. I know we're
Yes.
submitted to Cannes. So, we're really doing a lot of touring right now on the movie. Uh, the plan is to make it publicly available come first of the year. Yeah, we're currently in negotiations and talks with Netflix, Amazon Prime. We're hoping to catch a couple of laurels on this, so that way when we go to finally do get rid of it, we can make a little bit more money.
Yeah.
But we're there's also some discussions around the follow-up movie. The first one was called I Am Machine, and the second one we're kind of floating around a tentative title of We Are Machine, because if you ask me, the only difference between me and everybody else is I put it inside me. You guys all carry it around in your
Carry it around
pockets or
and
you
wear
wear
it
it
on
on
our
your wrist, but we're all
watches or
Borg
earbuds.
already.
Yeah. So, Len, thank you so much for being on this podcast. We are ran way over time, and I know you're a super busy man, but I do give all my guests the final word. And it doesn't have to be about the implants, it doesn't have to be about tech or cyber at all. Whatever you like to talk about, the final word is yours, sir.
My final word would be this. I really hope and I implore people, take some individual responsibility for your digital identities. Stop expecting that there's going to be some kind of an application that's going to protect you. Common sense is no longer common, and at the end of the day, you can have all the applications you want, but if you still make a bad choice, that choice falls on you. Individual responsibility and own your data.
Wow. Wow. Well, Len, wonderful ending statement. Thank you so much for your time and being here on the Top Cyber Pro podcast. This is a phenomenal
It
gentleman,
was my
folks.
pleasure.
Follow him, follow his links, follow his journey because his journey is really just begun. And so please follow because he's leading that forefront and there's more great things in the future for this gentleman. Thank you, Lynn.
It's been a pleasure, John. Jim, thank you so much for the opportunity. Maybe we can do it again sometime.
I hope so. We so too.